The cabin felt like a forgotten corner of the world, tucked away in the misty hills of the Pacific Northwest, where the pines whispered secrets to the wind and cell service was nothing but a cruel joke. I never imagined I'd be stranded here with Elias, not like this, not after dodging the invisible line between us for so long. He was my older sister's ex-boyfriend, the one who had vanished from our lives 5 years ago after their messy breakup. Now 38, he carried himself with that quiet intensity, broad-shouldered and weathered, like a man who'd seen too much of the world's rough edges. His words were sparse, but when they came, they hit like thunder. Deep, resonant, impossible to ignore. We'd grown up in the same small coastal town, but Elias had always been on the periphery of my life. He was the brooding type, the one who fixed boats down at the harbor and disappeared for weeks on fishing trips, carrying burdens that made him seem untouchable. I was 34 now, independent, with a career in graphic design that kept me glued to screens and cities. But when my sister begged me to check on the family cabin after a storm warning, claiming she couldn't make it because of work, and I arrived to find Elias already there, hammering boards over a leaky window, the air thickened with unspoken history. She must have set this up, I thought, but there was no way to confirm. No signal, no roads clear enough to drive out in the pouring rain, and a forecast promising 3 more days of isolation. I could have turned around, found a motel in the nearest town, but something rooted me in place. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the way his eyes lingered on me when I stepped inside, dripping wet from the downpour, no longer the awkward 20-something he'd known back then. That first night, we barely spoke. He built a fire in the old stone hearth, the flames crackling like they were mocking the tension between us. We shared a bottle of whiskey he'd brought, strong, peaty stuff that burned going down. The cabin was small, just a living area with a worn couch, a kitchenette, and 2 bedrooms branching off like afterthoughts. Outside, the rain hammered the roof like it was trying to drown out our silence. Elias sat across from me, his flannel shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded from years of manual labor. He didn't pry, didn't fill the void with small talk. But his gaze, it was different. Assessing, like he saw through the layers I'd built up over the years. As the fire died to embers, he stood, stretching like a predator uncoiling. He didn't say goodnight. Instead, he fixed those dark eyes on me and murmured, "You staying out here or coming with me?" His voice was gravelly, laced with intent. It wasn't a question born of politeness. It was a challenge, a doorway cracked open to something forbidden. My pulse raced. I knew what crossing that threshold meant. No excuses, no turning back. And yet I rose from the couch, my legs unsteady, and followed him down the dim hallway. The bedroom was sparse, a queen bed with faded quilts, a nightstand holding a dusty lamp and windows rattling against the storm. Moonlight filtered through the rain-streaked glass, casting shadows that danced like ghosts. Elias didn't turn on the light. He stood by the bed watching me enter, his expression unreadable. Was it hunger, regret, or something sharper like the edge of a blade? I closed the door behind me, the click echoing louder than it should have. He beckoned me closer with a subtle tilt of his head. I stepped forward, my breath shallow, the air charged with electricity. "You ever given up the reins before?" he asked, his voice low, almost a growl, as if he could already sense my answer in the way I trembled. Not entirely, I admitted, my words barely audible over the pounding of my heart. My hands were clammy, my mind a whirlwind of doubt and desire. Elias closed the distance, his hand finding my hip, gripping with a firmness that sent sparks through my skin. He didn't rush. He savored the moment, his thumb tracing slow circles through the fabric of my sweater. His eyes locked on mine, studying every flicker of reaction, the quickening of my breath, the flush creeping up my neck. It was like he was unraveling me thread by thread, testing how far I'd bend before breaking. "Good," he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. "Then let go. No fighting it tonight." His kiss came then, slow, deliberate, like a storm building on the horizon. Not frantic, but consuming, his lips claiming mine with a patience that made my knees weak. He'd waited for this, I realized, perhaps longer than I knew. His hand slipped under my sweater, calloused fingers brushing my bare skin, sending shivers racing down my spine. I gasped into his mouth, my body arching instinctively toward him. He guided me to the bed, easing me down onto the mattress without a word. The quilts were soft beneath me, but his presence was overwhelming, solid, unyielding. He hovered above, his weight a promise of what was to come. "I'm going to show you what it's like to be truly wanted," he murmured, his lips trailing fire along my jaw, down to my neck. To be taken apart and put back together. My mind raced, but my body betrayed me, responding to every touch, every whisper. When he tugged my sweater over my head, exposing me to the cool air, I didn't resist. His mouth followed, kissing a path across my collarbone, my shoulders, lingering on the curve of my breast. I whispered his name, a plea and a confession all at once. "I didn't expect this," I breathed, my fingers threading through his hair. "You did," he replied, his voice husky against my skin. "Deep down, you've always wondered. And tonight you'll know, he was right. The years of stolen glances, the unspoken tension whenever he was around my sister, it had built to this." Elias was older, wiser in ways that intimidated and thrilled me. At 38, he moved with the confidence of someone who'd learned patience the hard way. He undressed me methodically, his hands exploring every inch as if committing me to memory. When he finally shed his own clothes, revealing the hard lines of his body, scarred from old injuries, strong from a life of labor, I couldn't look away. He positioned himself above me, his hands pinning my wrist gently but firmly above my head. "Tell me you want this," he demanded, his eyes boring into mine. "I do," I gasped. "God, yes." With that, he entered me, slow at first, letting me adjust to his size, the fullness that bordered on overwhelming. I cried out, my back arching, nails digging into his shoulders. It wasn't just physical. It was a surrender, a release of control I'd clung to for too long. Elias set a rhythm, deep and unhurried, each thrust building waves of pleasure that crashed over me. He whispered encouragements, praises, his voice an anchor in the storm. "That's it. Let me hear you. You're perfect like this." We didn't stop after the first climax. He pulled me through it, then built me up again, his stamina relentless. Twice, 3 times, he shifted positions, turning me onto my side, then pulling me on top, letting me ride him while his hands guided my hips. Each time he watched my face, drinking in my reactions as if my pleasure fueled his own. By the 4th, I was trembling, oversensitive, begging for more even as tears pricked my eyes from the intensity. He held me close, his beard scraping my skin, his breath ragged. "One more," he urged. "For me." The 5th time was slower, more intimate, our bodies slick with sweat, moving in perfect sync. When we finally collapsed, tangled in the sheets, laughter bubbled up between us, exhausted, euphoric. I rested my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow, thinking this was the start of something profound, something real. But morning brought a cruel twist. The bed was empty when I woke, the space beside me cold and vacant. My hand searched blindly, hoping for warmth for him, but found only rumpled sheets. The ache in my body was a vivid reminder of the night. The stretch, the bruises from his grip, the lingering soreness that made me smile despite myself. I sat up, pulling on a robe, and padded into the living room. The fire was out, ashes gray and lifeless. His jacket was gone from the hook by the door, his boots absent from the mat. The kitchen was pristine, no sign of breakfast or a note. Panic clawed at my throat. Why? After everything, the vulnerability, the connection, he'd vanished like smoke. I stepped outside onto the porch, the rain now a light drizzle, the forest dripping with moisture. His truck was gone, tire tracks fresh in the mud. No goodbye, no explanation. Just absence. I sank onto the steps, hugging my knees, replaying every moment. The way he'd kissed me like I was precious, held me like I was his lifeline. It couldn't have been nothing. Not with the intensity, the repetition, the way he'd murmured my name like a prayer. Hours blurred into one another. I wandered the cabin, tracing my fingers over surfaces he'd touched. The armchair by the fire, the counter where he'd poured our drinks. I didn't wash the sheets, clinging to his scent like a lifeline. The ache between my legs was a constant reminder, a mix of pleasure and pain that made me crave him all over again. I imagined him returning, explaining it was a misunderstanding, pulling me back into his arms, but the phone stayed silent. No signal to call, no way to reach out. Doubt crept in. Was I just a rebound from my sister? A momentary distraction? Or worse, had he regretted crossing that line? The isolation amplified everything, the loneliness, the confusion, the raw want that hadn't faded. By evening, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows through the trees, I realized the truth. I was in deeper than I'd admitted. Elias wasn't just a fling. He was a storm that had upended my world, and now, in the quiet aftermath, I didn't know if I'd ever hear from him again, or if the cabin would forever upended my world. And now, in the quiet aftermath, I didn't know if I'd ever hear from him again, or if the cabin would forever hold the ghost of what might have been. I sat by the window, watching the road, hoping for headlights in the dusk, my heart a tangled mess of hope and heartbreak. My heart was still racing from the night before like a drumbeat that wouldn't fade. I'd met him, Ethan, at that dimly lit coffee shop downtown, the one with the exposed brick walls and the scent of fresh espresso hanging in the air. It wasn't my usual scene. I was more of a homebody, scrolling through apps or burying myself in work. But that evening something pulled me out. Maybe it was the loneliness that had been creeping in, or maybe it was fate. Whatever it was, when our eyes met across the crowded room, it felt electric. He was tall, with broad shoulders that strained against his faded denim shirt and a smile that could light up the darkest corners. Dark hair tousled just enough to look effortless, and eyes the color of stormy seas, deep, intense, pulling you in. We started talking about nothing important. The overpriced lattes, the indie band playing softly in the background, but conversation flowed like we'd known each other for years. He was a mechanic, he said, fixing up old cars in a garage on the outskirts of town. I told him I was a graphic designer, always chasing deadlines in my tiny apartment. Before I knew it, hours had slipped by and the shop was closing. "Want to keep this going?" he asked, his voice low and inviting. I nodded, my pulse quickening. We ended up at his place, a cozy loft above the garage where he worked. It smelled like oil and pine, with tools scattered on a workbench and a worn leather couch that invited you to sink in. We shared a bottle of cheap wine, laughing about our worst dates, our dreams, the little things that made us tick. And then, somehow, his hand brushed mine, and the air shifted. That night wasn't just passion. It was a revelation. Ethan's touch was deliberate, confident, like he knew exactly how to unravel me. We moved to his bed, sheets tangled around us, and he held my gaze the entire time. "You're incredible," he murmured, his breath hot against my skin. We came together not once, but 6 times, each one building on the last, waves crashing over us in a rhythm that felt eternal. His hands explored every inch of me, gripping my hips, tracing my spine, making me feel desired in a way I'd never experienced. It wasn't rushed. It was intimate, vulnerable. He whispered things that made my chest ache. "This feels right. Don't let go." In those moments, I let down walls I'd built high over years of guarded hookups and fleeting connections. With Ethan, it felt real, like we'd stumbled into something profound. But morning came too soon. He kissed me goodbye at the door, promising to text later. "Last night was amazing," he said, his eyes lingering on mine. I drove home in a daze, replaying every touch, every word. My body still hummed from him, sore in the best way, alive with the memory of his weight on me, his lips on my neck. Hours passed. No text. I checked my phone obsessively, telling myself he was busy. Work, maybe. Or sleeping off the night. By evening, doubt crept in. I scrolled through our brief chat history, just the initial messages from the app where we'd matched earlier that day. Nothing new. I searched for him on social media. His profile was sparse. A few photos of classic cars he'd restored, a hiking trip with friends, but no recent posts. His stories were empty. Then the green dot appeared. He was online. My heart leaped. I typed out a casual, "Hey, how's your day?" but deleted it before sending. I didn't want to seem needy, even though a part of me was crumbling. I'd never been like this. Relationships for me were casual, surface level. I'd come out in college, navigated the dating scene with caution, always keeping my heart at arm's length. But Ethan had pierced through that armor. That night wasn't just physical. It was emotional surrender. The way he looked at me, like I was the center of his universe, the tenderness mixed with raw desire, it unlocked something deep inside. Now without him, I felt exposed, adrift. I confided in my sister Lena over the phone. I kept it vague. Met this guy, had an incredible connection, and now radio silence. She tried to be supportive. "People get scared, Jamie, or maybe he's just not ready. Don't overthink it." But her words bounced off me. She didn't know the details, the way he'd held me after, our bodies entwined, talking about our fears until dawn. How could that be fake? Days blurred into sleepless nights. I'd lie in bed, eyes wide open, feeling the ghost of his touch. His fingers digging into my thighs, his mouth exploring me, the heat building until we both shattered. "You drive me wild," he'd groaned, pulling me closer each time. 6 rounds of ecstasy, each one more intense, like he couldn't get enough. But now, silence. I started questioning everything. Was I too open? Too eager? Or was it all an act for him? A conquest to add to his list? The spiral deepened. Work suffered. My designs came out flat, uninspired. Food lost its taste. Friends noticed my distraction, but I brushed it off. Deep down, I knew I had to do something. So against my better judgment, I drove back to the coffee shop. It was a long shot, but I needed proof he existed, that I hadn't dreamed it all. I parked across the street, sipping a cold brew I didn't want, scanning the crowd, and there he was. Ethan leaning against his vintage truck in the parking lot, chatting with someone, a guy this time, tall, athletic build, dark hair, laughing as he clapped Ethan on the shoulder. My stomach twisted into knots. Was this why? Was he playing both sides, or worse, had I been a secret experiment? I watched from afar, hidden in my car, my breath shallow. They seemed close, familiar. The jealousy burned hot, irrational. Just as I was about to drive away, defeated, Ethan's head turned. Our eyes locked through the windshield. Time froze. No smile, no acknowledgement, just a flicker of recognition, maybe regret. Then he looked away, back to his friend, as if I were a stranger. I sat there, engine idling, tears blurring my vision. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. I wanted to storm over, demand answers. What the hell happened? Why ignore me? But fear held me back. Rejection in person would shatter me. So I drove home, the ache in my chest growing with every mile. That encounter only fueled the obsession. I couldn't let it go. A week later, I returned to the coffee shop, not for caffeine, but for closure. I sat at the corner table, nursing a drink, my leg bouncing with nerves. The place was busier than usual, filled with chatter and the hiss of the espresso machine. Midnight approached when he walked in. Same confident stride, same worn jeans and jacket that hugged his frame. His eyes found mine almost immediately and his expression shifted. Surprise, then resignation. He approached slowly, sliding into the seat across from me. "Jamie," he said, voice rough. "What are you doing here?" "You vanished," I blurted, my words sharper than intended. After that night, after everything we shared. 6 times, Ethan, you looked at me like I meant something. And then nothing. Why? He rubbed a hand over his face, exhaling deeply. It wasn't supposed to go like that. What wasn't? I pressed, my voice trembling. Us, the connection? You said things, did things, that made me believe it was more. He glanced around, lowering his voice. I know, and it was. That's why I pulled back. Silence hung heavy, the weight of unspoken truths pressing down. That guy you saw me with? He's my brother. We were just catching up. But it's not about him. Then what is it? I demanded, leaning forward. Ethan's eyes met mine, filled with a storm of emotions. I have a daughter. She's 8, from a previous relationship that ended messy, divorce, custody battles. I've been fighting to be the father she deserves, putting everything else on hold. Relationships? They've always complicated things. But that night with you, it woke something up. I felt alive, wanted. Not just the physical part, the way we talked, connected. It scared me shitless. My mind reeled. A kid? It explained the hesitation, the walls. Why not tell me? Why ghost? Because if I didn't, he admitted, his voice cracking, I might not have stopped. I wanted more than one night. I wanted you. Your laugh, your vulnerability, the way you let me in. But I'm not ready. My life's a mess right now. Court dates, co-parenting drama. I can't drag you into that. Tears pricked my eyes. Part of me understood the responsibility, the fear, but the hurt ran deep. You made me feel seen, Ethan, like I mattered. And then you left me questioning everything. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. The touch sent sparks through me, memories flooding back, our bodies moving in sync, his whispers of praise, the exhaustion and bliss after the 6th time. It wasn't just sex for me either, he said softly. I've replayed that night 100 times. Your skin under my hands, the sounds you made. God, Jamie, you're unforgettable. For a moment, hope flickered. Maybe we could take it slow. But reality intruded. I need time, he continued, to sort my shit out. For her, for me, maybe then. I pulled my hand back, nodding through the pain. Then go, figure it out. Inside, I screamed for him to stay, to choose us. But I couldn't beg. He stood, lingering like he wanted to say more. Then with a final haunted look, he walked out into the night. Months passed. I threw myself into work, therapy, rebuilding the pieces he'd stirred up. I dated casually, but nothing compared. Ethan became a memory, a lesson in vulnerability, in the beauty and brutality of connection. I never heard from him again, but I carried that night with me, the intensity, the intimacy, the way he showed me I could be wanted so fiercely. Even if it was fleeting, because sometimes, one night changes everything, even when it ends in goodbye.